What's up, guys?
Thanks for joining us today for today's episode. Today we're going to be talking about betting, sports wagering. So we each kind of bring a different influence to this topic, and yeah, let's get into it. So I'm Caitlin.
I'm Nora.
And I'm Caitlin.
And Nora's going to start us off with high school betting.
Yes, so I'm starting at the ground level with youth and high school sports. And the big thing here is that legally minors cannot bet. So no sportsbook is allowed to take any wager from anyone under 18 or 21, depending on the state. But even though it's illegal, the culture around kids is still full of gambling influences.
This is crazy. Like, what could kids be betting on? Like, this is just so insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And if you watch any big game, kids are seeing betting ads, influencer pics on TikTok, and fantasy content basically 24/7. So even though high schoolers can't legally place a bet, the exposure is definitely still there.
I still can't believe there's so much like high schoolers see. Like, do you think there could be like a policy that people put in place so that minors can't see ads for gambling on their phone?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could definitely be a potential solution. It might be hard to implement, but it would be good for them to cut down that exposure. And then for elite high school athletes like prep basketball academy kids or 5 stars headed into the NIL pipeline, there are real integrity concerns because if gambling culture is everywhere, these players become targets for pressure or information leaks before they even get to college. And high school sports are very strict. Every state athletic association has a zero tolerance policy for betting. Coaches, players, administrators, none of them can be involved in gambling in any way. At least 30 states have enacted statutes or regulations that outright ban betting on any event involving participants under 18. And schools care about reputation, protecting minors, and avoiding scandals. And then the stakeholders here, they all want something different. The parents want their kids protected. Athletes just want to play and not have to deal with any betting drama. Schools and coaches have to enforce the strict rules. Sportsbooks want to appear responsible. And regulators are trying to keep underage betting all under control, which is tough when social media is basically the Wild West.
I feel like high school kids are already dealing with so much that sports betting is just gonna blow up their entire like livelihood. Like, recruiting is already like so stressful, so adding this just seems like it could cause so many problems.
Yeah, totally. And so why does this all matter? It's pretty much just we want to protect the minors. That's what matters. Teenagers are more vulnerable to the addiction of gambling and social pressure, and we also need to protect the integrity of high school sports. I mean, gambling culture is becoming so normalized that it kind of blurs that line between being a fan and being a bettor, and how we handle youth and high school sports sets the tone for their transition into college. And if we don't protect them now, we're basically sending them into college athletics already exposed to the gambling risks. So that kind of sets the stage, and now that we've kind of mentioned college athletics, Caitlin, it's your turn.
Thanks, Nora. So when we talk about the college landscape and college sports betting, I feel like this is a perfect segue into what I'm going to talk about, because obviously the stage is a lot bigger and things get a little bit more complicated. And in the coming days, we're going to see a huge shift because sports betting will be allowed for NCAA athletes, but we'll have to do another episode and talk about that. So when I first think about college sports betting, what comes to mind is Murphy versus the NCAA back in 2018.
Wait, no way. Because I read so much about Murphy v. versus NCAA too.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me what you know.
So basically, the Supreme Court struck down a federal law called PASPA, which had banned sports betting in most of the states. This decision then gave each state the power to kind of make its own call on if they want to legalize sports betting.
What does PASPA stand for?
It's a good question. PASPA stands for Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so after all of that happened, there were a lot of ripple effects for college sports after this.
What were some of those effects?
So overnight, college athletes were suddenly surrounded by legal betting markets, mobile sports books, and ads on TV and social media. they were still prohibited from sports betting, but now everyone around them was doing it, so obviously this made things a lot more difficult. And this brings us to the NCAA's response. For years, the NCAA's stance was extremely strict, but then after Murphy, that approach fell apart because this was totally unrealistic and it was impossible to keep in touch with reality and keep it so minor first-time betting violations can lead to reinstatement after education, but serious violations like betting on your own sport or sharing insider information still come with major penalties. And insider information is a huge point here because in some states, knowingly giving inside injury info or game plans to bettors can be considered a criminal offense, not just an NCAA violation. And so this was the shift towards an educational first model, as they call it. And all of these changes affect a huge list of stakeholders. Off the top of my head, I know the NCAA wants to protect integrity, avoid scandals, student athletes want freedom, but they face addiction risks, online harassment, pressure to get people to try to get information. And coaches, compliance officers are stuck in the middle trying to educate and monitor athletes. So just to bring up one current case, NCAA athletes who were permanently banned from sports wagering were 2 Fresno State players, Mikel Robertson and Jalen Weaver, and 1 San Jose State player, Steven Vasquez, and they were all found betting on their own teams or sharing information about themselves. Some of them even bet on themselves, and totaling about $2,000. And at one point, they even underperformed to match these results, which is absolutely crazy. But then a little bit after that, recently, we've now understood that sports betting will be legal. And we can see that there are some noticeable changes with this. It's permissible after November 22nd, so in 2 days, for student athletes and staff members to wager on any professional sport, including sports that are sponsored by the NCAA. So this is your basketball, football, hockey, pretty much anything. And you can also wager on elite international events, so the World Cup or Olympic Games. But there are still serious violations that have been in place since the beginning. So betting on your own team, betting on your own sport, or sharing inside information, or trying to manipulate outcomes. So these actions will still lead to major suspensions or permanent loss of eligibility. And this matters because college athletes are in such a uniquely vulnerable spot. They're adults, but they're not professionals yet. So we all have this inside information, and we're not making a salary, so there is a lot of temptation to share information or place bets and stuff like that, and there's a lot of public pressure. But we don't have the same security as pros, so things get a little bit dicey there. And the NCAA is still trying to figure out what's the best balance for athletes. But until then, we'll just have to see what the future holds for these athletes.
So in 2 days, Caitlin, are you going to start sports betting?
I don't know. It still seems wrong to me and risky, but I guess it'll be legal and maybe I'll have to place my first ever bet. But I'm sure some people have already been doing that, so we'll see.
All right, so from Caitlin, we go to the professional level. And in the professional level, the money, the stakes, and the politics all become much larger. So for decades, leagues like the NFL, NBA, and MLB were totally against sports betting because they said it threatened the integrity of their game. But after the 2018 Murphy v. NCAA decision that Caitlin and I talked about a little bit earlier, the door for states to legalize betting opened and everything flipped. Today, we see leagues have official sportsbook partners, betting segments on broadcasts, and even some arenas have in-arena betting lounges. Players still face strict rules, though. They can gamble on most sports, but not their own league, and definitely not using inside information. Those rules come from collective bargaining agreements, or CBAs, which are negotiated between the leagues and their player unions. Each league has their own CBA and has slightly different guidelines, but the main goal is the same: protect the integrity of the game, educate their players, and prevent gambling from crossing the line.
I feel like college and professional are very similar in that way. It seems the college era is heading towards basically being professional in that sense.
100%.
Yeah.
So for the stakeholders for professional level, it gets pretty interesting because leagues want to profit, but they also want to keep the integrity of their sport. Teams want sponsorship money, but also need to protect their own individual brand. Players want freedom, but they can also face addiction risk. Sports books want profit, but also want to seem responsible to the people paying for them. States want tax revenue, and fans enjoy betting, but it also leads to athlete harassment and unrealistic expectations. So why does this matter? Even at the pro level, betting threatens competition integrity. There's more pressure, more money, and more opportunity for misuse of inside information. It also affects the athlete's welfare, with more stress, more gambling exposure, and way more harassment from angry bettors or fantasy players. Economically, betting has changed the way sports make money. Broadcasts, sponsorships, and even team valuations are now tied to gambling partnerships. And culturally, gambling has become a regular part of watching sports, which is great for revenue, but it raises huge ethical and mental concerns, especially when there's so many young fans who are watching all of this happen. So, from youth to college to the pros, sports betting has basically reshaped the entire sports world. And every level is still trying to figure out how to balance the money, the culture, and the responsibility to protect their own athletes.
So, question for you guys. If gambling is becoming normal at every level, what responsibility do schools and leagues have to protect younger athletes before they get to college or the pros?
Thank you guys for joining us, and see you next time. Bye.